To that end, Chair, after our conversation up in Silverdale that evening, where you said you'd love to actually meet and talk to a couple of officers, today I've got Clifford and Sue. Clifford's a supervisor, a senior officer, and been with us I'm not going to say how long, but a long time, Clifford. And Sue as well, a long-serving officer, two of our most experienced, and I'm sure they'll be able to potentially introduce themselves, but also start the conversation off about a day in the life of a transport officer. So without further ado, I think I'll hand over to my team, and they're sick of me talking anyway, so over to you, team, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Oh, hello, councillors and Chair. I'm Clifford. I'm a transport supervisor. I was a transport officer for about 3 years. I was in the original recruitment, which was we started on the network in November in 2017. I'm coming up 6 years this year. It's a really interesting job we have out there. Our main focus is customer service and enforcement. And as John mentioned in one of his slides, we have 2 shifts running every day. So we have transport officers deployed on the public transport network from about 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And then with special events that he mentioned, like at Kingsland and say Mount Smart and these other things, we will work maybe even to midnight or 1 in the morning. So we're a very flexible team. Our day normally starts by, as John mentioned, about covering areas that we should go out to, and where there's maybe customer service required, fare evasion seen. So we go out on the trains and we will do enforcement. We check hop cars, we check tickets, and we give customer service. And we're warranted to give an infringement fee if the person doesn't have a valid fare. We do work really hard at giving customer service and getting them complying. If we cannot get accurate information, we feel it's not accurate, we actually disembark people from the trains. On buses, and we cover CityLink, which is a high-risk area. We have a lot of people, as people know in the city area, a lot of homeless people, a lot of people who just want to travel from K Road to Queen Street or vice versa, who do not want to pay. So we do our utmost to actually stop them boarding the bus. A lot of our job is involved in, I'm going to say, we can, under the police warrant, we can direct people to give details, we can direct to disembark them, but in a lot of our job, we actually we have to bluff very well in front of customers. And it comes down to quite often how difficult you can bluff the customer. On CityLink buses, and sometimes even showing up on the NEX buses, we now have a problem with people at the lights either trying to board the bus or disembark the buses by pushing the emergency doors. And this is a real problem because the bus is stopping at the lights. Someone wants a free ride. They push the door at the back, jump on the bus. And once they're seated, it's impossible to get someone off. And it's the same now. We've got people, especially in the city area, who want the bus want to get off the bus wherever they like. So the bus will stop for a red light or slow down for traffic. They push the back door and jump off the bus. We're kept really busy on these buses, actually covering the doorway. So when we're on a bus now, you may see transport officers. One will be standing in the back door, one will be standing by the front door to actually stop this type of behaviour. In our job, we do see we are high vis, and that is very important for customers to actually see us because it cuts down a lot on fare evasion. Visibility is very important in our job. I would think probably about 95% of people who are going to cause trouble, if they see us, will not get on a bus or a train or a ferry. So visibility is really important. We also do a lot of things about helping various customers out there. It's just not about enforcement. It's not about disembarking people. I'll ask Sue to give a couple of stories of instances she's seen or know about where we've actually helped people out in the network.
Thank you, Clifford.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sue Speedy. I'm Transport Officer 7063, and I'm really proud of the job that I do out on the network. Usually we do fare evasion, as Clifford pointed out, but it's usually around customer safety and protection. So we may have young women travelling later at night, and they see the high vis and they'll come to you and say, I'm having a problem with a gentleman on the train who turns out to be not a gentleman at all. And so you can make her journey much safer by simply sitting with her, talking through her concerns. The guy involved then either disembarks, or we can disembark him, or we can call the police to sort that problem out. Other situations, we have medical emergencies. One of our officers, who's an exceptional example of being a transport officer, was on a CityLink bus and just out of the corner of her eye saw that one of her customers had blood on their person, and it turned out she had a very deep self-harming cut that she had actually just inflicted. And our officers stepped in immediately, looked after that, called the police, gave her first aid, and stayed with her for reassurance. The outcome could have been completely different if the transport officers hadn't been on there. And these sorts of things are what makes our job so rewarding, because we're out amongst our customers for a long time during the day, and they become sometimes more than customers, because we get involved in their daily routines and their situations, and we take pride in doing that.
Yeah, the other thing also out on the network, we actually build up a lot of rapport with stakeholders, like, for example, bus drivers, train managers, I suppose One Rail staff, all these different stakeholders. And it's amazing the conversations that we get from them. And even with customers, I call them train friends. When you've been on the train services sort of regularly, there's people that say, hello, how are you today? You don't actually, may not even know their name, but I classify them as train friends. And it's amazing. Sometimes, I'm not saying we're not counsellors, don't like that, but it's amazing. Some stories, they'll tell us family problems, all this type of thing. And whether it's, we don't always give advice, but I think sometimes they just want to get it out of their system. So, you know, it's another part of our job, is that people, because they've built trust in us, they want to tell us personal things about their family. And, you know, I never thought that would have happened in this job, but it's just amazing how this rapport builds up. You see people for a few minutes every day, and then suddenly they're telling you things going on in their life. And, you know, so in that, it's another way we're just bringing comfort to people travelling. We've also had, I remember I was on a train one day with a couple of transport officers, and we actually on this train had two people that both had angina or heart attacks going on, basically at the same time. And we had to keep them as comfortable as we could. We had to arrange the ambulance. We had to actually get the train stopped at a particular place. We had to get them into the onto the platform. We had to look after them till the ambulance came, all that sort of thing. So that is part of our job. Medical emergencies, they don't happen every day, but they do happen. So we do cover a wide range of things. And also, I was just talking earlier, a little bit about fare evasion, and that people now, it's changed in the public transport arena. For a long time there, when we first started, people didn't say anything, so they would just see us on the train, they would just nod. But now, when we're sometimes disembarking people or helping in a situation, people are coming up to us and saying how great it is to actually see us out there doing something. People are appreciating that we're there. Oh, I saw that man, he's been getting on for free for the last 2 weeks, and you've actually dealt with that person, you've disembarked him or you've infringed him, and people are really happy to actually see that. And also, it's amazing, people say how good it is to you see us on the trains. I remember a conversation I had with an older lady probably a couple of months ago. I was on a train and she came up to me and said, I was going up to her, and she said to me, oh, you guys must have a terrible job because you're dealing with, troublesome people all the time. And I just turned around to her and said, ma'am, it's ladies like you that make this job really worthwhile. And got a big smile on her face, and it just changed the whole atmosphere. And that's the thing about, Sue mentioned earlier, you know, how she loves the job. It's a great job because most of the people we deal with make our day. It's only a small amount that because when they ruin your day, they really ruin your day. But really, it is about helping people. It's about getting them to their journey. It's about, and there have been lots of issues. I know they've spoken earlier. Someone mentioned about bus driver shortages and that, and there's been some rail problems. There was the wet weather, and that our job is to actually get those people home safely and quickly on the public transport, and we've really been able to do that. And there's another situation that arose.
Hang on, Cliff. Stand by.
Yeah.
Just through the chair, I think maybe would you like an opportunity for any of the councillors, Chair, to have some questions?
Yes, I think that'd be useful, John. We can certainly see from Clifford and Sue that we've got people of some skill and appropriateness in those roles, and that they are obviously very important roles, the human component, both in terms of our AT staff, the drivers and conductors and whatnot, but also in protecting the public and many faceted forms. So I think it'd be really useful then. I think if we open up to a few questions from people and see if we can get a little bit of the benefit of the obvious experience and enthusiasm of Clifford and Sue in their work, because they've obviously seen a lot more in 6 years than anyone else has in the Auckland's PT network. So I'll just before I do that, I just need to move a quick extension of time. It's moved by Councillor Darby, second by Councillor Walker, and I'll open it up now to any questions.
Clifford and Sue, Chris Darby here, and thank you, Clifford and Sue, both, incredibly articulate about, the way you've managed to convey what your daily job is, and it's coloured it very differently for me. So I really appreciate that. I notice your presence, and your colleagues, of course, on the network when I'm taking my ferry and bus, and I really appreciate it. I do notice the very subtle way you approach some difficult characters as well. It takes a lot of skill. So just look, probably at the end, Clifford, where you were saying only some customers are difficult, but what sort of tools do you use to deal with pretty trying situations? I'm sure there's some quite physically threatening situations. What sort of tricks have you got up your sleeve, Sue or Clifford, that you could maybe, just say, well, this is how I deal with that situation? Can you give us a couple of scenarios, one each maybe?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. One of the things you learn very early in this job is less is better. So you need to keep the conversation to the minimum. And one thing you do, I'll just give an example. So I've got someone on a train that basically refused to, say, give their details. The situation might escalate a little bit, and then I will say to them very, very firmly and nicely, sir, you have to disembark at the next station. You don't have a valid fare and you're off. At that stage, I have to walk away. He's going to start saying to me, no, I'm not getting off. No, I'm getting off, giving all the reasons. If I stay there, he will play me like a fish. But the moment I walk away from this person, his control over me has vanished in his mind, and I'll just carry on down the train as though we didn't have this conversation. When the train arrives at the next station, and as the door opens, I wander up and say, sir, you're off here. And about 99.9% of the time, he will get off. If I stood there and talked to him, he wouldn't get off. So it's sort of less is best.
Well, each situation is completely different, but Clifford's right. You have to bite down on any comment that you might want to make, because if you inflame the situation, it gets out of hand very quickly. So we have this wonderful device called a body-worn camera, and I find that I turn it on when I'm driving home, even though I don't still have it, because as soon as I get into a situation which I feel is going to become aggressive, abusive, violent, I reach for the body-worn camera, and 9 times out of 10, when that happens, it steps the person back away from you. Then you can tell them what you want, which in most cases is you need to disembark the train. If the body-worn camera doesn't work, then you have to call for backup, because that's what we work in teams of 2, sometimes 3, and your colleagues are your safety net. So if one person is dealing with an aggressive customer and the body-worn camera doesn't work, when you have 2 hivers standing talking to an aggressive customer, usually they back away, just because you've got now 2 qualified officers dealing with the situation. So we've all been in some very hairy situations, but thank God none of our transport officers have been hurt, and we owe that to our training and also our resilience on the network. And the training we have to thank Auckland Transport for. They keep giving us refresher training, and that helps us through the situation. So I never feel threatened on the network, but I have been in some situations which in normal life I wouldn't have to confront. But as I said, we have the training, so we're ready to deal with it. And we've got, as I say, a lot of tools of the trade with the body-worn camera.
Thank you both.
Yeah, good question, Councillor Darby, and you can see there the psychology that you could maybe come along and give us some training as councillors. Well, I know I could do. I'll speak for myself. I could do with a few of those techniques, I think. So, I think part of the reason we're flying a bit here is that there's a number of us want to join that public transport network very soon, heading out of the way of Eden Park. So I've noticed that there's a bit of a stamping of feet here. So Clifford and Sue, thank you very much. We may see you on the train if you're out there today. John, thank you very much for setting this presentation up. I really appreciate that follow-up from Silverdale, where we had some of these issues at our depot that were really quite challenging and raised real questions of public safety. And I certainly know that our committee have appreciated your response here and the reassurance over what surveillance and what responses Auckland Transport have at their disposal. And I think what will inevitably happen here is that we will return, our committee will return to the people on the ground, the transport officers, the drivers, to ensure that public component, that human face, whatever form it takes, in either from officers or our public catching the services, is to our fore, rather than it being a rather abstract principle of a transport network that just runs seamlessly with buses and trains and ferries going everywhere. And if there's not other things there that are equally important, that we know from international experience are crucial, that we keep an eye, we keep a check, we have personnel and skilled personnel like yourself there at the key intervention points to make it all work, especially when we're trying to encourage people to use it. So thank you again. I'm happy to move, seconded by Councillor Darby again. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Dean, you're up now. We're gathering a bit of pace here. Sorry that you've had to wait so long. It's been one of those days, Dean. And I'm sure Kylie will be keen to expedite matters too. I think perhaps more so than anyone, from what I've heard. Welcome, Dean. I'll leave you and Kylie to introduce the item. Kylie Clegg is standing in for Wayne Donnelly here today as a board member, and I think her daughter is involved in some shape or form later this evening. Okay. Right. Okay, Dean.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Chair. And kia ora, everybody. I know it's this is an update on Auckland Transport for the committee at the end of a very long day. The reassuring thing I told both Clifford and Sue was that all these discussions around strategy and policy and funding all translate onto the ground, and they are the face of Auckland Council and Auckland Transport and the eyes of our customers. So Just realised all that talk is for the purpose of making sure they do an awesome job. Can I just touch on a few things? I will go fast through this presentation. Most of it may take us read. I just want to highlight a few things on slides. Stacey will pick up on a couple of the safety issues. But before we dive into it, I'm pleased to confirm that all transport networks are up and operating again. It has been an awesome effort from everybody, police, Auckland Transport, Auckland Council, all of those involved. And our team has now shifted a couple of hours ago from incident management into event delivery mode. And so we're confident that we are ready to go and support an awesome event at which Kylie's daughter, Millie, is one of the New Zealand Football Ferns team members. So I know many of you want to get to the opening. Can we go to the next slide? I want to flick through a few highlights. So I'll just pull out a few things here. Over June, remember we're looking back at this point, over June, our weekly passenger movements were in that range of 77% to 84% of our target. I'm really pleased to say over the last week, though, we're sitting at 100%. The thing I'm very proud about is that all the effort going to get bus drivers and schedules back landed, resulted a week ago. And over this last week, we've been hitting circa 100% of what our target is. So this has been a huge effort from everybody. I'm happy to talk to June, but I want to talk about July more, so I have. Cancellations are under 4%, not quite where we want them, but so close. There's a whisker in it. You can see we're 88 drivers short, but that hasn't stopped us getting all the schedules back. The transponder rollout, so this is about productivity through the network. This is about ensuring that buses have got preference, so that phase 3 is all about Eastern Busway and stage 1. That rollout's now completed, so buses moving that through that part of the network are communicating with the lights and able to move more quickly. All the new Community Connect concessions were launched. That was a mammoth effort, I might add. And you can see a few other achievements here around the opening of Matakana Link Road, electric ferries, build contracts signed. Okay, so I'll leave those as read. Stacey has been working along with the team to help support NZ Bus and the unions to resolve the industrial dispute. We are close to resolution. There's meetings between NZ Bus and the unions today and tomorrow. I heard a long conversation around Tahuia, so I'm not going to repeat anything there. That's something for both Kiwi Rail and Waka Kotahi to resolve. We're just supporting them wherever we can. Next slide. I wanted to touch on a couple of strategic issues. The shame is we won't be able to really dive into these. They're worthy of it. But the first strategic issue, and it does lead into the operational questions that you've asked as a committee, we cannot really progress as Auckland Council or Auckland Transport with our transport system unless we resolve the funding and revenue model. It needs to be urgently reviewed, which is the bottom bullet point. I acknowledge that whilst Auckland Council is part of that from a ratepayer perspective, this responsibility primarily sits with Ministry of Transport. For all the reasons we understand, fuel excise duty, road user charges will not cut it as we go forward. As we think about what's happening for Auckland Transport, and I can't make this point any more plainly, our capital investment and our operating costs just to deliver public transport services will all but double over the next 10 years. At the same time, the revenue base over which that is being funded will be declining unless we make a change. What we're seeing now is because we have such pressure on the funding model that's limiting investment, whether it's operational investment or capital investment, we're seeing our assets deteriorate at a faster rate than we want. or need, and you can see that that being measured in asset condition. So I'd like to go to the next slide, if that's okay. This slide is somewhat complicated, but I'll tell a story around it. Top left-hand corner, orange bars. You'll see the rate of renewals across our network in the orange bars. You see that's come off over the last few years as we've chosen to take renewals investment and put that into new capital investment. The blue line that sits across the top tells us what the fault rate is across our network. So it's pretty simple math. As we don't invest in our network, the fault rate goes up and condition deteriorates, which is what the next graph shows immediately below with the different coloured bars. So you can see across different types of the network, whether it's regional or arterial, whether it's corridors of primary or secondary nature, you can see how over time condition surveys demonstrating our assets are deteriorating. The top right-hand box tells you what our target renewals investment approach should be, the frequency at which assets should be replaced and renewed. The bottom right-hand corner, you see blue bars and a line across the top. The line across the top represents the investment that we should be placing in terms of renewing our assets as approved with the Waka Kotahi through our asset management plan. But due to a lack of funding, the bars represent what we are investing. The cumulative build over the next 10 years will mean you're just short of $1 billion under invested, or a backlog of $1 billion worth of investment to get our assets back to where they need to be. That is the simple message. If we continue this way, and I don't want to labour the point any more than this, but the challenges you've got on the rail network will become the challenges you've got on your road network. Next slide. Oh, sorry, I talked to that inverted bars one. Next slide. Operational updates. So this is touching on some of the questions that you've asked. In essence, what's happening with the road surface renewal program. You'll see here, last year we did circa 350 kilometres. This year we're targeting 450 kilometres. You can see the split requires $145 million worth of funding. If we're going to start addressing backlog, we need to shift through to 600 to 650 kilometres per annum. That shift is unfunded, but that's what you'll need to do. And it'll take some 10 years to claw back the backlog. Next slide. There's also a question on the rationale around raised crossings. Simply put, the simple objective here is to slow speed in areas where we've got high density of pedestrians or vulnerable users. You can see the relationship between speed and the percentage death risk. Over our program, you can see that the investments made will result in a potential or a predicted reduction of 57 deaths. The cost of delivering that is 89 million, with some 300 raised pedestrian crossings with an associated social cost saving of 139. So you've got a positive benefit cost ratio. What makes that even more interesting is that $139 million savings is calculated only if a police call out occurs. So it doesn't pick up on all the non-police call out injuries or lost time or social impact. That would significantly lift it maybe by a factor of 5. Next slide. Weather. I think we've talked a lot about this in past committee meetings, but you'll see there that we're down to 6 road closures and 10 with restricted access. Huge effort, combined team, council and Auckland Transport. So I can only congratulate everybody on their focus and the effort that's gone in. Next slide. Performance metrics. These are these performance metrics are measurements against the previous statement of intent, not the current one. You'll see boardings, emissions, streetlight LEDs, and other metrics are showing improvement, which is great against the SOI. You'll see on the other side that we've got some real challenges around death and serious injuries, because those have been increasing despite investment in areas that are pulling it down. We're still seeing it go up. Fare box recovery, there was a discussion around Te Huia. Fare box recovery in Auckland right now, to the end of May, was just under 15%. We expect to see that increase with return to full fares, and you can see the cell network resurfacing. That 12 includes, for example, 3 DSI reductions plus some other metrics that align. Next slide. I think I've talked enough about metrics on patronage. I will leave you to read those, except to say that you can see the continued build-up. The top right-hand slide shows how we compare with our sister cities throughout New Zealand, being Wellington and Christchurch. Our recovery rate's been behind theirs, but I think you'll see it tick up now. We've got schedules back on, but our reliability is equal, if not better, than their performance. Next slide. Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Stacey. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I will quickly say too about PT this week in terms of what we've seen, because we did put all those suspended services back into operation. And so they were fully available as a regular service offering at 100% from Monday. So we still did have a number of cancellations, albeit that's 3% on a full timetable. What we did see Tuesday and Wednesday was some very, very favourable sort of results in terms of patronage. It was circa 95% in comparison to the same day in 2019, and in particular with our bus services. So we're watching that obviously closely. A disruption like today obviously takes a little knock to the week, so to speak, amongst other things. But in terms of that, it does show that things are heading in the right direction. So the team's really happy about that. Yeah. In terms of safety performance, we did have a really bad June. And you would have seen that in media as well. There was a number of deaths and serious injuries that occurred on our roads. The trend in motorcycles continues. And so in terms of the past 12 months up to the end of June, where 57 lives have been lost and 613 people have been seriously injured. So still far, far away from where we want to be. Year to date, obviously that's 320 DSI from January, with fatalities up 17% year on year, and that's largely due to what we saw as quite a bad month on our roads in June. This month is tracking substantially better, albeit we obviously would like to see zero there. Howick has obviously seen a really large increase in fatalities, and what we're really noticing there too is side impact crashes. So that tends to think that people are taking risky turns. So that is, we've seen quite a substantial increase in how that's represented in the data. And so we're trying to understand that a little bit more and see where we have these isolated areas to see what other mitigations we need to do. Congestion, a lot of the time motorcyclists may be trying to turn where there's what I'll call substantial queues of cars and things like that, and not being seen in terms. So drivers and motorcyclists remain the largest groups harmed, representing 37% and 21% as it says. So if we go to the next page. Right. And so it's very similar, I think, to last time we updated. 50% of those injuries occurred in the 6 local board areas of Rodney, Franklin, Manurewa, Otara, Howick and Waitemata. And the trend, I guess, in terms of that continues. Like I said, those causal factors and things that we're sort of diving more into do suggest that there is more sort of what I call risk-taking happening on our roads. Now, when we met in May, we did talk about the trend with motorcyclists. So we did prepare something for June. So we do have it available that we can share after the meeting in terms of what we're seeing with motorcyclists and what mitigations and programs more broadly are underway with that area. Leave that there.
Okay. Look, this slide will take us read. CapEx delivery across the program, 96% of what we budgeted has been delivered. And we finished at the end of May with OPEX being 21 favourable against budget. The story through to the end of June, which will be reported on shortly through the annual report, is a similar trend. So I think there's a lot to be proud of in those results. There ends the presentation at pace. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Really appreciate that, Stacey, as well. We have a couple of quick questions from councillors here. Councillor Newman, Henderson and Ferry.
Thank you very much, Dean and Kylie and the team at AT. Nothing you can do about people who want to just take a destructive course on the back of a motorbike. Just happens. But one thing that we can do is confirm that we just simply won't go backwards anymore in terms of the renewals. So Auckland Transport, I presume, is going to have to come to us and say, we can't be all things to all people. We just simply have to preference the renewals ahead of all else, because you're right, we're falling behind, but the bigger cost of falling behind is the impact on that network, and it's just going to get more and more expensive to catch up. And we can close down a hall, a building, a library, whatever. We shouldn't be doing that, but we can. But we can't just let the roads just fall apart. You're going to come to us and preference those renewals ahead of everything else, because what I'm seeing here, these are alarming. And even in the worst times of 3 or 4 years ago, nowhere near as bad as this when it comes to some of the renewals targets that we are not meeting, and the state of these roads as a result.
Councillor Newman, thank you for that. Yes, we will be. I took the opportunity today to outline what I see as a strategic issue for Auckland Transport and Auckland Council to address. We need to address that with government. It is urgent. There's been too much talk and not enough action. And Auckland Transport Board, credit to them, is looking to prioritise renewals through the way that it's allocating funding. But there is huge demand from councillors, local boards, the government to invest in new capital projects. And that is a really difficult tension to balance unless you address the funding and revenue side of the equation. Otherwise, you're just moving things around in a very small pool. And yes, we can improve value for money and efficiency, but that's 10% of the question. It's not the 100% that we will be short. Sorry, Kylie, you've got your hand up.
No, I totally agree. I just wondered if I could jump in as well, just from a board perspective. Totally support your comments, Dean. And the reality is that the AT asset base is suffering deterioration at an unsustainable rate, creating high cost problems for the near future. And I guess it is our biggest concern at the moment, and we continue to face balancing the new investment versus maintaining our existing. And with the cumulative degradation of the existing assets, that pendulum of decision making has to be swaying more and more and more towards existing assets. So yes, I think that we will be coming, won't we, Dean?
We will.
Per council and Waka Kotahi.
Thanks for that input, Kylie. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks. Just a quick one. We're still getting, when we put through constituent inquiries, it's taking a long time. It's taking sometimes months, definitely much longer in nearly every case than what the resident is expecting. So what are we going to do about the customer experience here? Because it's starting to really become a reputational issue.
You're talking in response to written or verbal complaints. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Look, it's interesting. In our last board report, we were closing customer complaints through satisfactory resolution at as good, if not better, rates than what I'd seen. So look, it is a reputational issue. We need to focus on efficient and effective resolution. I am aware of a number that are just taking too long. There are a number of things that I'm happy to share with you, Councillor, about what we're doing, but part of it is a philosophical and very practical shift towards getting resolution as close to the first point of contact with the customer as possible. So that's a very deliberate move. It goes to delegated authority to call centre staff or liaison staff with local boards or bid teams, being able to make a decision there and then and commit Auckland Transport and its suppliers to doing something about the issue. So look, there's a range of initiatives, but I'm happy to come back and talk about that individually with you if that would be helpful.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Slippery.
Thanks. Mindful of time, I had a whole lot of questions, but I'm going to boil them down into two. One is, who do I send my questions to? Noting Duncan's the author of the report on our agenda, so if I can have a steer of who, so send them to Duncan, okay. And then the second question, which is a follow-on from that, I find these presentations and updates really useful, but I'm wondering how we can get them into the public agenda on the agenda report, because I think that they would be a really useful public document too. I know they come out in the minutes afterwards, but for example, I noticed Gail taking a photo before of some of the slides. I think it would be useful for the public to have some kind of summary of this in the published agenda. So that's my other question.
Look, from my point of view, Councillor, I'm more than happy. There's nothing here that we shouldn't be shining light on. So welcome to add it to the public agenda.
Councillor Turner, you got a quick question to finish off?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chair, I've been dropping in and out. Just two quick questions. Mr. Kimkin, I stated to you in a meeting a little while ago that 25% of Auckland Transport's budget is spent on traffic control. You told me I was wrong and that you'd get back to me, but you haven't. So do I take it that I was right?
No, you don't, but it does mean that I haven't got back to you. I'm sorry about that, Councillor.
That's good.
Yep.
Okay, and the other question is, or point out that a lot of the contractors around the place are tearing their hair out with traffic control, and it's been pointed out to me that a lot of it is Auckland Transport policy, not rule, not regulation, but policy. There is a big difference there.
Yeah. So look, I think as everybody knows, there's a very significant specific initiative around reviewing temporary traffic management. The code of practice, whether aside from interpretation, is one that's been that we implement, care of Waka Kotahi. We're working with them to shift from a fixed standard to a risk-based approach. We're trialling that with downers. We're looking at fees and charges. We're looking at tuning down the area that needs to be occupied. There's a whole range of initiatives. I'm happy to provide a brief memo. We've been working very closely with the Mayor's Office on this, alongside Vector Chorus and Watercare. So there's a lot of work happening in this space. I think you'll continue to see a marked improvement. We're committed to addressing it. Ken?
Councillor Lee, final question.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dean and Stacey. Can I just make a couple of comments, if I could, on the two key aspects that have been brought to our attention by Dean, and that is the cost of renewals and the long-term sustainability of that. That's a serious worry for all of us. Obviously, our funding is not limitless, and therefore the real concern is the situation sustainable? And I am really concerned that the way things have happened is that we are very much at the mercy of a cartel of construction corporates. And I do think we need to ensure we're getting rigor in our contracts in terms of the cost of, for instance, road repairs, and some national and perhaps international benchmarking, because it's not just a supply side issue, and we can't ignore that. We're dealing with a market, and we're dealing with aggressive corporates who always have the eye on a bottom line for their shareholders, and so should we. Second point is, I think we need to be pretty clear about where we are with PT, which is one of our main efforts. We have AT keeps excellent figures on all aspects of public transport and the other aspects of the AT mission. Now, I hear the number, is it 69 million PT for June. Now, there's real numbers and there's percentages, and quite often I've had to pick up AT on communications talking about 70%, 80%, and so on. The fact of the matter is, if we do have 69 million for the end of June, going back to the comparison of June 2019 pre-COVID, that makes it that we're about 68%, nowhere near 70%, 79% or 90%. So we're at 68%, and we are lagging behind comparative cities, and so that's a concern for all of us. I'll just leave it at that.
Chair, if I can just provide some clarity. The difficulty is, and I'll admit to being maybe part of the problem, we mix year on year, month on month, and day on day. So what you see in today's presentation was month on month. You'll also see us talk about year on year. What I shared with this week in July was day on day. The comparative day in 2019 compared to the same day in 2023, we achieved 100% of what we were experiencing. And so I think let's get this nuanced properly. My report to you is that we're moving in a really strong and positive direction. We've got the schedules back, we've got the bus drivers. Our job is now to fill them.
Dean, thank you for that. Of course, we get that message, and we have that message constantly. But the fact is, we need to keep our eyes open about the real situation. 69 million packs per year compared to 101 in 2019 at exactly the same time. The math is pretty clear.
Right. Thanks for the comments and the response there. Stacey, if you wouldn't mind, you mentioned some additional data on motorcyclists. If you could forward that through to Duncan, please, then we can distribute that to the council after the meeting. I'll move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Darby, and a very quick comment from Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Chair. Kylie, for you, I just want to acknowledge, Kylie, the decision of yourself and your professional board members in favour of the Great North Road project. Kylie, thanks for your lead on that. Thanks for your focus on safety. Thanks for noting the importance of protecting or ensuring the safety of our young people going to the schools that project supports. And also acknowledging in your words of debate at the meeting, Kylie, our under-delivery in favour of cycling. But of course, that wasn't just a cycling project, that was a streetscape project, a bus priority project, the greening of our city and making the city much safer. So Kylie, if you could please convey my appreciation to your professional board colleagues for their green lighting of that project, and acknowledging the overwhelming public support for it, and also the political support that you received as well in making your decision. And lastly, I wish you a really wonderful family night tonight, Kylie. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No. Carried. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Stacey. Sorry about the rather rushed nature here. We this sort of hasten to say greater forces intervene, but you know what I mean, Dean. There's and it's a big night for Auckland Transport on this too, and we certainly thank in advance the team that's out there, and every big event that invariably turn up the goods, ensure people get there and get back in a reasonable amount of time. That's certainly been my experience in the last 13 years. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got just a pro forma item here, item 16, summary of Transport and Infrastructure Committee, moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Henderson. All those in favour? Against? No. We now go into the, there's no consideration of extraordinary item 17. We now go into confidential. We'll just stay on the line, please. We hope to deal with this very quickly. Moved Walker, seconded Watson. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We'll just only just have to thank you, Gail, for your thank you for your attendance today, and for taking an interest, and no doubt you'll make use of your networks to inform people what's going on. We thank you for that.